Before America heard his voice, Jourdan Blue was fighting battles most rising artists never speak about publicly. Jourdan Blue grew up in New Orleans, a city known for vibrance, culture, and constant sound, but his early years were anything but stable. While he was naturally drawn to music, appearing in school musicals and choir programs, the environment around him made it difficult to stay on track. Teachers noticed his talent early, but they also noticed the pressures he navigated outside the classroom. His teenage years eventually derailed when he was removed from school, a moment that triggered a long period of instability. With no structure and nowhere steady to sleep, he moved between couches, back rooms, and even bathroom stalls at workplaces where he picked up short-term shifts. This period wasn't glamorous or artsy, it was survival. Jourdan wasn't building a brand, he was trying to figure out where he belonged in a world that didn't seem to have space for him. What ultimately pulled him from that cycle was the intervention of his grandfather, who offered him a place to stay, and more importantly, a chance to reset. That support served as the first anchor he had in years. It gave him stability, access to meals, and the mental space to reconsider what he wanted out of life. Many artists talk about humble beginnings, but Jourdan's were harsher and far more complex. These years shaped not just his character, but also the depth of emotion people would later hear in his music. And even then, he had no idea that the hardships he carried would eventually fuel one of the most talked-about performances in a talent show season. But gaining stability didn't solve everything. In fact, it opened the door to an entirely different phase of his journey. For Jourdan Blue, street performing wasn't a stepping stone. At times, it was his only form of income and emotional expression. After finding stability at home, Jourdan needed a way to support himself and his young family. Traditional jobs came and went, but music remained the one constant. So he turned to the streets of New Orleans, where thousands of performers compete daily for attention, tips, and fleeting moments of connection with passers-by. Jourdan set up wherever he could, street corners, pedestrian walkways, festival edges, carrying a speaker powered by a car battery because professional gear was out of reach. Night after night, he sang to tourists, locals, and strangers heading home from work. Some nights he earned enough to help his girlfriend and son. Other nights he barely made anything at all. But something began to shift. Videos of his performances, taken by people who stopped to listen, started circulating online. People recognized the sincerity in his voice and the conviction behind each lyric. This wasn't a singer chasing viral moments. He was someone who poured lived experience into every song he chose. Still, the work remained unpredictable. There were nights with harsh weather, nights interrupted by law enforcement, and nights where he had to compete with louder, more established street acts. Yet every performance was preparation. Without realizing it, Jourdan was training himself, learning breath control in unpredictable conditions, learning how to engage crowds who didn't plan to listen, and learning how to keep going even when exhaustion hit. These were skills most artists develop in controlled environments. Jourdan developed them in real-world chaos. But the moment that would redefine his entire path came not from a performance, but from a tragedy that hit far too close to home. Jourdan's decision to audition for America's Got Talent wasn't driven by ambition. It was driven by a moment of fear, clarity, and urgency. On New Year's Day 2025, a shocking incident unfolded in New Orleans when a truck tore through a crowded block. Several people were injured, and the area descended into confusion and chaos. What struck Jourdan the hardest was the location. This was the exact place where he had performed regularly. He could easily picture himself standing there with a microphone, and he could picture the audience he often drew in those very moments. Witnesses later described the event as deeply unsettling, but for Jourdan, it became something much more personal, a wake-up call. He had spent years putting off his larger dreams, convinced he needed more time, more money, or more stability before shooting for something bigger. But watching the aftermath of the incident forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth: time is never guaranteed. He later told friends that the tragedy made him ask himself whether he was waiting for the perfect moment that might never come. That internal shift led him to do something bold. He submitted an audition for America's Got Talent. Jourdan didn't make this decision believing he was destined to win. Instead, he approached it as a responsibility, to himself, to his son, and to the loved ones who supported him. The audition was a chance to step away from survival mode and into possibility. And even though he carried fear and doubt into the submission process, The decision set off a chain of events that would soon draw national attention. And when he finally stepped onto the AGT stage, his life took a turn that even he couldn't have predicted. The moment Jourdan Blue opened his mouth to sing, the atmosphere inside the AGT theater shifted instantly. On May 27, 2025, under studio lights and a national audience, Jourdan walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, calm on the outside, fully aware of the stakes on the inside. He chose Break-Even, Falling to Pieces, a song known for its emotional weight, and from the first line it became clear that this performance was different. His voice had the rawness of lived experience and the control of a seasoned performer. Audience members later described the silence in the room as startling, as if everyone collectively leaned in to process what they were hearing. Judges reacted immediately. Simon Cowell leaned forward, eyes narrowed with focus. Sofia Vergara began nodding halfway through the first chorus. Mel B covered her mouth, visibly moved, and Howie Mandel watched with the kind of attention usually reserved for the most surprising acts of the season. By the time he hit the final note, the audience erupted into applause, and all 4 judges rose to their feet. Then came the moment replayed millions of times online. Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer. Confetti poured down. Jourdan dropped to his knees in disbelief. His girlfriend and son ran onto the stage to hug him as judges praised the authenticity of his performance. This wasn't just another emotional moment. It was a breakthrough. A man who once sang for strangers on sidewalks was suddenly being recognized on one of the world's biggest stages. But just when the momentum seemed unstoppable, life tested him again, in a way no one backstage was prepared for. Hours before one of the most crucial performances of his life, Jourdan Blue was so sick he could barely stand upright. As the quarterfinals approached, public anticipation around Jourdan grew rapidly. His golden buzzer audition had already reached millions online, and fans were eager to see how he would handle the pressure. But behind the scenes, a serious problem emerged. Jourdan became suddenly ill, experiencing severe nausea and dizziness. Staff members reported he was pale, shaky, and struggling to stay upright. Medical assistance was offered, and producers quickly presented him with a rare option: use a pre-recorded performance instead of singing live. But Jourdan refused. He felt a responsibility, both to the show and to the people who believed in him, to perform live no matter the condition. In interviews afterward, crew members revealed that he pushed through waves of sickness up until moments before walking on stage. Yet when the cameras turned on, viewers had no clue what he was battling internally. His voice remained steady, emotional, and controlled. Many described it as one of his most intimate performances, filled with vulnerability that felt impossible to fake. Judges praised him not only for his vocals, but for his professionalism. They commended the emotional weight of the performance, unaware at first of the physical fight happening behind the scenes. That night solidified him as more than just a talented contestant. He became a symbol of perseverance, someone willing to perform under extreme conditions for the sake of his craft. And that resilience carried him all the way into the final stretch of the competition. Each round of America's Got Talent pushed Jourdan Blue to evolve, not just as a singer, but as an artist with something meaningful to say. In the semifinals, Jourdan returned with Stargazing, a performance viewers described as atmospheric and emotionally charged. His tone was richer, his presence more grounded, and his confidence noticeably transformed. Critics noted that he had transitioned from street performer with potential to fully emerging artist in just a few weeks. That momentum carried him into the finals, where he took a creative risk. Instead of choosing a mainstream hit, he performed Golden from the animated film K-pop Demon Hunters. It was an unexpected selection, one that surprised judges and audiences, but the risk paid off. Jourdan delivered the song with cinematic intensity, pairing vulnerability with control in a way that showcased his versatility. The performance demonstrated not only vocal strength but artistic intention. He wasn't simply trying to impress, he was telling a story. Judges praised his bravery in choosing an unconventional song, and fans online celebrated his growth from a local street singer to a polished finalist with international visibility. By the end of the season, Jourdan's impact reached far beyond the competition. His journey, from unstable beginnings to street stages to national television, resonated with viewers who saw their own struggles reflected in his resilience. He didn't rely on gimmicks or theatrics. His voice, shaped by years of hardship, carried its own authenticity. Jourdan Blue's rise is a reminder that talent can emerge from unexpected places, and that powerful stories often come from those who fought hardest to be heard.